Have you ever wondered why you talk more than you should? Why you reveal things you later regret? Or why your openness sometimes leaves you feeling drained instead of understood? There is a scientific explanation for that. And today, I want to walk you through 6 things you should never share with anyone, not because you need to hide, but because your brain, your emotional energy, and your sense of self need protection, not exposure. Before we begin, take a deep breath. This is not a video about silence. It's a video about self-preservation, about emotional intelligence, about reclaiming your inner power. Let's dive in. Most people don't realize this, but oversharing is not a personality trait. It's not because you're emotional. It's not because you're weak. And it's not because you talk too much. Oversharing is a coping mechanism. It's something your brain learned to do to survive emotional discomfort. Your brain is wired to seek relief. When emotional tension builds up, uncertainty, rejection, anxiety, loneliness, your nervous system looks for a fast way to discharge that pressure. And one of the fastest ways the brain knows is talking. When you talk about something emotionally charged, your brain releases dopamine, the same neurotransmitter involved in reward, pleasure, and relief. For a moment, you feel lighter, calmer, seen, validated. But here's what most people don't know. That relief is temporary and deceptive. Because neurologically, when you talk about something, your brain can mistake expression for resolution. In simple terms, your brain says, "Okay, this has been processed," even when it hasn't. This is why so many people talk and talk and talk, but don't actually move forward. They confuse expression with action. They confuse venting with healing. They confuse being heard with being regulated. And over time, this creates a dangerous loop. You feel emotional tension. You talk to release it. You feel brief relief, but nothing actually changes. So the tension comes back, often stronger. Now here's where it gets even more important. Your nervous system doesn't care about intention. It cares about safety. Every time you expose a vulnerable part of yourself, a fear, a wound, a doubt, your nervous system scans the environment and asks one simple question. Is this safe? If the person listening does not respond with genuine empathy, presence, and emotional maturity, your nervous system registers threat. Even if they didn't mean harm, even if they said nothing wrong, even if they smiled, your body notices subtle cues before your conscious mind does. A pause that lasts too long, a look that feels dismissive, a response that feels shallow, a shift in energy, and your nervous system stores that information. That's why, after oversharing, so many people walk away feeling drained, exposed, embarrassed, not understood, or strangely unsafe. And they can't explain why. That's because your body keeps the score long before your mind does. Your brain remembers. This wasn't safe. This cost energy. This reduced my sense of control. So now, not only are you still dealing with the original emotion, you're also dealing with emotional hangover. This is why oversharing doesn't just fail to heal you. It often weakens your emotional resilience over time. Because instead of learning how to self-regulate, your brain becomes dependent on external discharge. Talking becomes a substitute for inner stability. And here's the truth most people never hear. Emotional strength is not built by constant expression. It's built by regulation, by learning how to pause, how to process internally, how to choose when, how, and with whom you share. And that's exactly what we're going to do in this video. I'm going to show you how to protect your emotional energy, how to stop leaking power through impulsive sharing, and how to build self-regulation, clarity, and inner strength using neuroscience, psychology, and practical tools you can apply immediately. This is not about becoming silent. It's about becoming selective. Let's begin. If this kind of psychological clarity speaks to you, consider subscribing. This channel is for women who want emotional strength, not noise. Thing number 1, your plans and personal goals. Sharing your dreams too early might feel inspiring. It might even feel empowering. But neurologically, it's dangerous. And not because people are bad, but because your brain doesn't understand intention the way you think it does. Here's what actually happens inside your mind. When you talk about a goal before taking action, your brain releases reward chemicals, especially dopamine, the same chemicals released when you achieve something. Your brain doesn't clearly distinguish between declaring a goal and accomplishing it. So internally, a subtle message is sent. This has already been handled. And the result? Motivation drops. Urgency weakens. Follow-through fades. This is why so many people feel excited after talking about a dream, and then quietly lose the drive to pursue it. They didn't fail. Their brain simply cached the reward too early. Psychology calls this premature disclosure. Neuroscience calls it motivation leakage. Life simply calls it self-sabotage. But the damage doesn't stop there. Because once your goal leaves your inner world and enters the external world, something else is activated, the emotional environment. People react. Some react with doubt. Some with silence. Some with subtle comparison. Some with polite words that don't match their energy. And your brain is highly sensitive to those reactions. Even a small pause, a forced smile, a lukewarm response can activate your brain's threat detection system. Suddenly, a dream that felt alive inside you starts to feel fragile. You begin to question it, defend it, explain it, and the moment you feel the need to explain a dream, you've already lost some of its power, because dreams don't need justification. They need protection. Your goals require incubation, not exposure. Think of your dreams like seeds. If you pull a seed out of the soil every day to show someone how it's growing, it never develops roots. It dries out. It weakens. It dies. Dreams work the same way. They need silence, consistency, privacy, time. Silence is not secrecy. Silence is structure. And here's a truth that's uncomfortable but essential. Not everyone wants to see you change. Even people who love you may feel threatened by your growth. Because when you grow, you disrupt familiar dynamics. You become unpredictable. You outgrow roles they assign to you. So their nervous system reacts, often unconsciously. And your nervous system feels it. This is why many people abandon goals, not because they weren't capable, but because they exposed the dream before it was strong enough to survive opinions. Now let me ask you something honestly. How many times have you shared something you were excited about, only to feel less excited afterward? How many times did one comment, "Are you sure? Is this realistic? Maybe later," turn confidence into hesitation? That wasn't weakness. That was neurobiology. Your brain is designed to conserve energy and avoid perceived risk. When a dream feels socially unsafe, your brain quietly pulls back. So what's the solution? Not silence born from fear, but silence born from self-respect. You don't stop dreaming. You stop announcing. You let action speak first. You let consistency build confidence. You let results create their own explanation. Because here's the truth. People don't need to believe in your dreams. They need to see them. And by the time they do, your dream is no longer fragile. It's real. Before sharing a goal, pause and ask yourself, am I seeking validation or accountability? Does this person have emotional maturity and self-regulation? Will sharing this strengthen my commitment or dilute it? If the answer isn't clear, choose silence. Not because you're hiding, but because you're protecting what matters. Thing number 2, your deep emotional wounds. Your emotional wounds are not a weakness. They are a record of everything you have survived. Every disappointment, every abandonment, every moment you had to be strong when you didn't feel strong at all. But here's what psychology teaches us, and what most people never explain. When you share unresolved emotional pain with the wrong person, your brain doesn't interpret it as healing. It interprets it as re-exposure. Neurologically, your brain doesn't know the difference between remembering a painful experience and reliving it. So when you talk about a wound that hasn't been fully processed, especially in an unsafe emotional environment, your brain activates the same neural pathways associated with the original trauma. Your nervous system reacts as if it's happening again. Your heart rate changes. Your stress hormones increase. Your sense of emotional safety decreases. This is why, instead of feeling relief, you often walk away feeling more vulnerable, more unsettled, more exposed, or strangely ashamed. Not because you're too sensitive, not because you shared too much, but because your brain was trying to protect you from danger it detected too late. Your nervous system is designed to ask one critical question: am I safe here? And safety is not determined by words. It's determined by presence. Not every listener has the capacity to hold your pain. Some people listen out of curiosity, not care. They want the story, not the responsibility. Some listen to compare, measuring your pain against theirs, minimizing it, redirecting the focus back to themselves. And some listen quietly, store the information, and use it later, consciously or unconsciously, in moments of conflict, judgment, or distance. This isn't because people are cruel. It's because most people lack emotional capacity, and deep pain requires depth to be held. Your soul doesn't need an audience. It needs a safe container, a space where your nervous system can relax instead of brace, where your emotions are not analyzed, dismissed, or rushed, where silence is allowed, where presence matters more than advice. This is why oversharing wounds often delays healing instead of accelerating it. Because healing does not come from being heard by everyone. It comes from being held by the right environment. And sometimes, that environment needs to be you. There are seasons where speaking reopens what silence is trying to close. There are moments when the most mature response to pain is not explanation, but integration. Because every time you retell a wound without regulation, you reinforce the neural loop connected to it. But when you allow yourself to feel without performing, to process without narrating, to sit with your experience instead of packaging it for others, your brain begins to rewire. Your nervous system learns, I am safe inside myself. And that is where true healing starts. Before sharing something deeply painful, pause and ask yourself, is this person capable of emotional presence? Or just emotional curiosity? Emotional presence sounds like silence, patience, and grounded attention. Emotional curiosity sounds like questions, reactions, and opinions. If you're unsure, choose a safer option. Write it down. Journal it. Speak it out loud to yourself. Your brain receives much of the same relief, without the emotional risk. Because healing is not about exposure. It's about containment. And when your pain is held in the right place, it stops hurting and starts teaching. Thing number 3, your weaknesses and emotional triggers. Revealing your weaknesses is often mistaken for vulnerability, but they are not the same thing. Revealing your weaknesses is exposure. True vulnerability is selective. True vulnerability is shared only with people who have empathy, emotional maturity, integrity, consistency. And here is the uncomfortable truth. Most people do not meet these criteria. They may be kind. They may be curious. They may even care in their own way. But caring is not the same as having the emotional capacity to handle what is fragile in you. When you reveal what destabilizes you, what makes you anxious, insecure, afraid, or reactive, your brain does not interpret that moment as connection. It interprets it as risk. Neurologically, your brain registers the information as, this is the blueprint of how I can be hurt. And whether someone uses that information intentionally or unintentionally, it eventually gets activated. This isn't paranoia. This is psychology. Human beings are pattern recognition machines. We quickly learn where someone bends, where someone breaks, where someone surrenders, where someone feels guilty, where someone fears rejection. And we learn this primarily through words. Every time you explain what hurts you, what triggers you, what makes you doubt yourself, you are unconsciously teaching others how to influence you. Sometimes that influence shows up as manipulation, sometimes as subtle pressure, sometimes as emotional leverage, and sometimes as silence, which can be just as powerful. This is why many people feel confused in relationships. They say, I don't understand why this person has so much power over me. The answer is often simple. They know where you are vulnerable, not because they studied you, but because you explained yourself. And here's something important to understand. People don't attack what is strong. They whisper to what is fragile. When someone knows your triggers, they don't need to raise their voice. They don't need to confront you directly. They simply touch the right emotional nerve, and your nervous system reacts automatically. This is why oversharing weaknesses leads to emotional exhaustion. You start monitoring yourself, second-guessing yourself, explaining yourself, trying to stay regulated in environments that don't feel safe. And over time, your brain associates connection with danger. So let's redefine vulnerability. Vulnerability is not telling everyone how you feel. Vulnerability is having the courage to feel without needing to explain it to everyone. It is strength with discernment, because emotional information is power, and power, when given to the wrong hands, becomes a liability. You are allowed to be open, without being exposed. You are allowed to be honest, without being unprotected. You are allowed to have weaknesses, without advertising them. This is not emotional coldness. This is emotional intelligence. Before sharing something personal, pause and ask yourself, what emotional information am I giving this person? And what could they do with it, consciously or unconsciously? If the answer makes you uneasy, if you feel tension in your body, if you feel the need to justify or explain, that is not fear. That is a boundary revealing itself. Listen to it, because boundaries are not walls. They are instructions for self-respect. And when you protect your emotional triggers, you reclaim your power. Everything you're hearing here is part of a deeper body of work. If you want to keep building emotional self-mastery with me, subscribe and stay. Thing number 4, your private victories. Not every victory belongs on display. Some of your most powerful accomplishments didn't come with applause. They didn't come with witnesses. They didn't come with celebration. They happened quietly. A fear you faced without telling anyone. A decision you made when no one was watching. A habit you broke after years of trying. A boundary you finally honored, even though it was uncomfortable. These victories are not small. They are sacred. And here's what science explains, even though most people never talk about it. When you share an achievement too soon, especially before it has fully settled inside you, you activate what psychology calls the comparison system in others. The human brain is wired to compare. Not always consciously, not always maliciously, but automatically. So when someone hears about your success, their brain instantly measures. Where does this place me? How does this reflect on my life? What does this mean about my choices? And depending on where they are emotionally, this comparison can trigger envy, minimization, competition, passive judgment, or emotional withdrawal. Sometimes it's subtle. Sometimes it's masked as support, but your nervous system feels it. And here's what happens next inside your brain. The moment your achievement enters a socially unsafe space, your brain shifts out of celebration mode and into defense mode. You stop enjoying the victory. You start explaining it, justifying it, downplaying it, protecting it. Your peace evaporates, your energy drops, and something that should have strengthened you starts to drain you. Your accomplishment becomes a conversation instead of a triumph. And that matters, because internalized success builds confidence. Externalized success often builds dependence. When you rush to share a victory, your brain looks outward for validation instead of inward for integration. But true confidence doesn't come from being seen. It comes from being anchored. This is why people who are deeply secure often speak very little about their achievements. Not because they have nothing to say, but because they have nothing to prove. They let their nervous system absorb the win. They let their identity adjust to the new level. They let the success become part of who they are, not something they perform. And here's a powerful truth. What you celebrate privately strengthens you. What you announce prematurely often weakens you. Silence gives your victory roots. Noise pulls it into comparison. So instead of asking, who can I tell? Ask yourself, have I fully received this yet? Because when a victory is truly integrated, it doesn't need defense. It doesn't need explanation. It doesn't need applause. It radiates naturally. The next time you experience a personal victory, wait 72 hours before telling anyone. During those 3 days, write about it, acknowledge yourself, sit with the feeling of pride without rushing to share it. This allows your brain to internalize confidence, instead of seeking external validation. After 72 hours, if you choose to share, you'll notice something different. You won't need approval. You won't feel exposed. You won't feel defensive. Because the victory already belongs to you. And when something truly belongs to you, it doesn't need to be announced. Thing number 5, your deepest fears. Your fears are not weaknesses. They are emotional signals. They exist for a reason. Fear is how your nervous system communicates uncertainty, change, and potential risk. It is not there to stop you. It is there to inform you. But when you share your deepest fears with the wrong person, something critical happens inside your brain. Your nervous system does not register that moment as courage. It registers it as exposure. And exposure, when it feels unsafe, is interpreted as danger. Because fear is one of the most sensitive emotional states the brain has. When you reveal what scares you, What makes you hesitate, doubt, or freeze? You are exposing the most unprotected parts of your inner world. And people respond in different ways. Some dismiss your fear. They tell you it's not a big deal. They rush you past it. Some mock it, subtly or openly, turning vulnerability into embarrassment. Some minimize it. They compare it to their own experiences and imply you're overreacting. And some, often quietly, weaponize it. They remember it. They store it. And later, in moments of conflict, pressure, or control, they touch that fear again. Even if it's subtle, even if it's indirect, your nervous system notices, and your brain learns a dangerous lesson. Speaking my truth is not safe. So what happens next? You stop trusting your own emotional signals. You second-guess yourself. You silence your intuition. You override your internal warning system. And that's when fear stops being informative and starts becoming paralyzing. Because fear was never meant to be explained to everyone. It was meant to be processed internally first. Here's what neuroscience teaches us. When you name a fear calmly, without explaining it, defending it, or justifying it, you activate the prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain responsible for clarity and regulation. At the same time, activity in the amygdala, the brain's fear center, decreases. This is why fear often loses its intensity when it is acknowledged privately rather than exposed publicly. Fear needs attention, not an audience. It needs curiosity, not commentary. And when you learn to sit with your fear instead of broadcasting it, your nervous system begins to trust you again. It learns, I am safe inside myself. That trust is power, because fear doesn't disappear when you ignore it, but it transforms when you listen to it wisely. The next time fear arises, pause. Say it out loud, to yourself, not to others. This scares me. This feels unfamiliar. This is asking for my attention. No explanation. No storytelling. No justification. Just naming. This simple act lowers amygdala activity and restores emotional clarity. You'll notice something shift. The fear softens. Your body relaxes. Your thinking clears. Because when fear feels heard internally, it no longer needs to shout externally. And that is how fear becomes guidance, not control. Thing number 6, what you do out of love. Love is sacred energy. It is one of the most powerful emotional forces the human nervous system can experience. It regulates. It connects. It heals. But something subtle and dangerous happens when love becomes explained, justified, or narrated. When you constantly talk about what you do out of love, you shift from giving to proving, from presence to performance, from heart to ego. At that moment, love stops being an experience and becomes a message, and messages invite interpretation. People begin to measure your effort instead of feeling it. They analyze instead of receiving. They compare instead of appreciating. What was once generosity slowly turns into expectation. And expectation is the fastest way to drain love of its vitality. Psychologically, when others know how much you give, they adapt to it. Your effort becomes the baseline. Your care becomes assumed. Your presence becomes invisible. Not because people are ungrateful, but because the human brain normalizes what is repeatedly explained. This is why so many people feel emotionally exhausted in relationships. They give, they explain, they justify, they narrate, and then they feel unseen. Because love was no longer flowing. It was being tracked. There is a profound difference between being felt and being seen. Being seen requires explanation. Being felt requires presence. And love thrives in presence. This is why the most secure people rarely announce what they do out of love. They don't need recognition to validate their care. They don't need acknowledgement to continue giving. They don't need witnesses to know their heart is real. Their nervous system is regulated enough to give without attachment to outcome. And here's the truth most people never hear. The moment you feel the need to explain your love, it's usually because the love is no longer being reciprocated or respected. Explaining is often an unconscious attempt to restore balance. But balance is not restored through explanation. It is restored through boundaries, through silence, through choice, through discernment. Love does not need a narrator. It needs space. When you stop explaining what you do out of love, something powerful happens. People either begin to feel your absence, or they begin to value your presence. Either way, clarity is restored. Because love that is real does not need proof. It is felt in consistency, not commentary. This week, choose one act of kindness. Do it intentionally. Do it wholeheartedly. And then, tell no one. Don't explain it. Don't post it. Don't mention it later. Let your nervous system experience giving without validation. Your brain will begin to relearn the difference between authenticity and approval seeking. And that distinction restores emotional balance. Because love that is rooted in authenticity strengthens you. Love that depends on validation slowly depletes you. Silence is not suppression. Silence is self-management. It is emotional intelligence. It is neural protection. Silence is the space where your nervous system recovers, where your identity stabilizes, where your boundaries become clear. Every time you choose silence over oversharing, you strengthen your identity, your boundaries, your self-respect to your nervous system. The world does not need access to your entire inner life. Not everything needs to be explained. Not everything needs to be shared. Not everything needs to be processed out loud. What you protect becomes stronger. What you expose prematurely becomes vulnerable. So from today forward, remember this. You don't owe your story to anyone. You owe your peace to yourself. And when you honor that truth, silence stops feeling empty and starts feeling powerful. If this video helped you understand yourself more clearly, I created something to help you apply this work in your daily life. The Emotional Self-Mastery Workbook is a practical guide designed to help you regulate emotions, protect your energy, and stop oversharing without suppressing who you are. It's not a journal. It's a structured tool for emotional clarity and inner strength. You'll find the link in the description. Whenever you're ready,